morning. My name is Sarah Hendrickson. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at McFarland Public Library. And it is my honor to introduce Dorothea Salo to you. She is a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a distinguished faculty associate. I've actually had the pleasure of having her as a professor for some of my classes in their information school. Highly recommend them, and they actually tie in a little bit to what we're going to hear about tonight, which is your family history, audio, visual, and digital. So lots of different memories, and how do we go about saving those? So we're gonna do a little switch out with the computer so that hers is hooked up to our HDMI cord.
Right, do you wanna give you that? Alrighty. Adventures in dongles. One of the things that you learn very quickly doing this work is that you will be in hock to monoprice.com for the rest of your life just for cables and adapters, because there's so many different kinds of cables. The 20th century, it turns out, was a phenomenal time for innovation, right? For technological innovation in how we record the world around us. The thing about experimentation, though, is that a lot of experiments fail, but not before somebody has recorded something irreplaceable onto it. And now, if you're a librarian or an archivist or anybody concerned with maintaining our connection to the past, you have a problem. So what I'm here to talk about tonight is, like, all of us have this problem in our families now, and what in the world do we do about it? And why is it important to solve this problem for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities? Have to do the quick Badger Talks commercial. I'm here on behalf of Badger Talks. Badger Talks is a program of the University of Wisconsin at Madison that sends people who know stuff at the university out to organizations all over Wisconsin to talk about the stuff that we know. I've been doing Badger Talks for close to a decade now, I think. Have a website, and you know, they're phenomenal. This is actually one of the best things about my job. They have a website. It lists the people who are willing to come out and what their expertise areas are and the kinds of talks that they're ready to deliver. Pretty much any organization in Wisconsin, 2 Badger Talks a year at no cost. The McFarland Public Library is not paying anything for me to be here tonight, right? The Wisconsin idea is important, and this is one way that the University of Wisconsin at Madison observes it. So if you'd be interested in having an expert on almost anything under the sun come out and talk to your group, check out the Badger Talks website. And I believe it is just badgertalks.wisc.edu. All right, so let's take a moment and think. What's in your closet? not the clothes. Though, you know, style-in floppy disk couture, if you have that, might be worth keeping. But I'm talking about a thing that's really common in a lot of families, where the evidence of the family's history is in a box at the bottom of a closet somewhere. And what's in that box can vary. Very commonly, there's going to be photographs, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, but if you're interested during Q&A, I'm totally willing to talk about that. So photos really often, sometimes documentary evidence like marriage licenses, like letters. But then there's the stuff that I am going to be talking about tonight, which is film, which is video, which is a situation that one of my students a while ago came to me with. She came to me actually, let me grab this. One of these. Anybody even recognize this? What is this? This is a microcassette tape, better known to most people as an answering machine tape. And that is what she brought me. She says, this is an answering machine tape. Can you help? I was like, yep. I've got, these were super common in 1970s, 1980s. For social scientists, actually, when they're recording interviews for their research. So they're little portable microcassette players that you can still get, and I have a couple. So got the recording, no problem, gave it to her. And gave her the headphones, said, you can listen to this right now, and she did, and she started crying. I felt horrible. I was like, whoa, what's, if you don't mind me asking what's on there. And she says, my grandmother passed away a few months ago. And as far as anybody in my family knows, this answering machine tape with its message, it's the only recording that we have of her voice. I haven't heard her voice until now. Thank you so much. So yeah, these media can hold a lot of meaning for people. Some examples from some of the work that I've done over the years. This is from West Bend, Wisconsin. It's a LP, long playing record, it's vinyl, of the high school concert band, and a concert that they did in 1969. And if you think about 1969, getting a vinyl record pressed of a high school band concert, that's got to have been expensive, right? You don't just do that on a whim. So I was really curious why this happened. And if you flip over the sleeve here, you find out why. Turns out this was a tribute concert to a young man who had been in the band and had graduated, and then had gone over to Vietnam and had not come home. So I was proud to have my hands on this and to be able to recast it, because I'm not too worried about the preservability of vinyl if you keep it reasonably cool and only play it on well-functioning players. It's probably going to be fine. But to put it recast it in a form that more people could access and could listen to, because wow, actually this band was pretty good. I enjoyed listening to this one. And this is an example of Wisconsin treasure. The photo here, which courtesy again of Bangor and Area Historical Society, comes from 1961. The child on the left here, his name is Peter Holmland. He's still around, and he's still in the Bangor, La Crosse general area. The gentleman that he is talking to is his best friend. His best friend's name is John Davis, and in 1961 he was 85 years old. And John Davis was a chief of the Ho-Chunk people. So what Bangor and Area Historical Society came to me with was an open reel tape. Does anybody have or remember open reel tapes? They're about, the typical ones are about yay big. They're round and there's actual tape in them. They're like a cassette tape in a different housing, basically. And they're incredibly perishable for a lot of different reasons. If you have any of these in your home and you would like them to survive, if those recordings are important to you, please get them dealt with now. Because I am clawing the edges of the podium here, because these things were not manufactured well and they break in like incredible numbers of ways. So the tape of Peter here interviewing John Davis, his father, actually, Peter's father was also there and kind of prompting him. It's kind of a, informal oral history, if you will. But my gosh, it's fascinating. Like several hours of Peter and his dad basically asking John about his life. Far as I know, and I have looked, this is the only recording extant of John Davis in his own words. There are photos of him. If you go to the Wisconsin Historical Society website and you look, you can find other pictures of John Davis. This is the only recording that we have, far as I know, of his voice. And the tape was deteriorating pretty badly. It was not in good shape. So I made an educated guess as to what was wrong with it, got back with the Historical Society and said, I'm gonna have to bake this, all right? Which is Something up?
No.
Oh, streaming? Okay. I'm gonna have to bake this, which is a thing that you do with tapes that have a certain kind of failure called sticky shed syndrome. And got this trick from an actual AV archivist. There are ovens that you can buy that are specifically meant for baking tapes. They're like 4 figures. You don't need that. Get a food dehydrator. Works fine. You set it to about 130, you leave it overnight, and most likely the tape is then going to play back fine. The things you learn, especially about keeping costs down. But yeah, that was a Wisconsin treasure that I held in my hands right there and saved for future generations. And the thought I want to leave you all with tonight is that chances are at least one person listening to me right now also has a Wisconsin treasure in their possession. Let's get those saved. It's important. So a thing that happens to me actually quite often is that somebody on campus will contact me and say, I have floppy disks. Is there any hope? Interestingly, usually there is, even though 5 1/4-inch floppies, which these are, really not built to last. They're called floppies because you can actually flop them. I will grab one and demonstrate. These are completely unimportant, by the way. It doesn't matter if they break. But yeah, they flop. They flop real good. Usually, the reason that they want me to try to save whatever's on the floppy is that it's evidence of someone's research. It's data. In a case I dealt with actually quite recently, it was a piece of software that they had written, gosh knows when, back in the 1990s sometime. It wasn't 5 1/4s. But it was software that had made a big splash at the time, and there was source code and other stuff on those floppy disks that they wanted. So yeah, 3.5-inch floppy disks. Weirdly, I actually have better luck with the 5 1/4s. I do not know why this is. Which is not to say that if you have 3.5s, it's hopeless. It's definitely not. But they can be a little bit finicky. Anyway, I did an event for the American Library Association's Preservation Week one year, where I basically set up workstations and invited people to bring their stuff in and we'll see what we can save. So I had a gentleman come in with an entire canister, entire box of 3.5-inch floppies. I was like, okay, so I sat him down with a laptop and an external floppy drive, said, go to town. And at the end of the evening, he had dealt with all of his floppy disks, and he came up to shake my hand, and he said, thank you so much. This is all of my daughter's schoolwork from grade school to grad school. And I don't know if it's important to her anymore, but it's important to me. This was a weird one. Who remembers 8-track tapes? When I was starting out doing this work, I would do demos of equipment that actually eventually led to my kits, as I'll talk about. I would do demos of equipment at things like the Madison Makers Fair, back in the day when that was a thing. And when people learn that you do this work, one of the first things they try to do is get you. They want to figure out the thing that they know about that you can't do. And so they kept asking me about freaking 8-track tapes. Why would I bother with 8-track tapes? That was a consumer music format. The point was that you could play music in your car, right? Because the music format in broad use at that time was, again, the open reel tape, and you can't play those in a car. You can't play vinyl in a car. But you could play 8-track tapes in a car, so that was the niche. But this is consumer music. It's been remastered 1 billion times by now. Why would I bother with an 8-track tape machine? But I was tired of getting the question. So I thrifted an 8-track tape machine. And then I got a couple of boxes of stuff from Mineral Point Library and Archives. And I'm going through it to do the inventory. I'm like, 8-track tape? Why? But there was an actual oral history on that 8-track tape. If I remember right, it was not a miner at Pendarvis, but somebody who worked at the railroad depot. So shipping all that stuff in and out. But oral history on an 8-track tape, talk about things that I never expected. But lots of surprises in this business. So before all of this nonsense with open reels and 8-track tapes and video formats, don't get me started on video formats. I am still discovering new video formats that I didn't know about. What do we do before all of this happened? And Catherine Marshall, a researcher, information scientist, says that what we used to have for documentation was, again, mostly things like photos and documents. And what you would do with those, the strategy for dealing with those, is what she calls benign neglect, which is you put it in a box and you put the box in your closet. And it's not just personal family materials. A lot of organizations behave the same way with their stuff. And the chief virtue of this strategy is that often it works. For a lot of different kinds of paper-ish materials, if you put them in a cool, dark place, they're gonna be fine. So benign neglect, totally viable strategy. What's different now? Well, this is not my entire collection of weird things. I have many more weird things. But there's a lot of different kinds of media, as I said, that got invented in the 20th, early 21st century. So it's not like paper conservation and paper-like things conservation is exactly easy. It's not. But it's largely a solved problem. If you go to a conservation librarian or to an archivist with something, they probably know what to do with it. Some of these, not a solved problem. Some of these media are fragile. And it's not like, again, paper is not fragile. I can flick my Bic and take out a library, right? And I'm being facetious, but I shouldn't. If you think about the National Archives and Museum of Brazil, which basically burned close to the ground a few years ago. And the loss there is just incalculable. What I will say is that these media are differently fragile from paper. There are different ways that they fail. Some of them have virtues that make them easier to preserve if you know what you're doing. But yeah, you have to kind of reckon with fragility. For example, anything that's magnetic media, which means pretty much any tape. Cassette tapes, definitely open reel tapes. What else have I got here? Videotapes of almost any kind. VHS, mini DV, anybody remember those little tiny camcorders? Super cute. Those micro cassette tapes, let me see, digital audio tape. I just saw a grant announced from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Lots and lots of money to figure out how to preserve digital audio tape. And I'm like, dudes, I already know how to do that. I have done it. What? I can't do anything with IMLS. Anyway, 8-track tapes, etc. Right? Ticking clock. The chemical engineers, of which I am not one, I am a librarian. The chemical engineers say that for most magnetic media, we've got about 15 years before we start seeing just widespread information loss, unplayability. And that's not because of anything that we did as consumers, as owners of this media. They just were not manufactured to last. So yeah, libraries and archives, and definitely our families, are staring this ticking clock in the face. Equipment scarcity. Who's thrown out a VCR in their lifetime? I'll raise my hand, I have. I've thrown out several, actually, because I use them pretty hard in this work and they do break. For now, VHS is common enough that I can just get another one. But there are a number of video formats where that's not possible. I have to clutch my players very close to my bosom. I have to be very careful about maintaining them and getting them fixed every once in a while, because if they break, I'm not getting another one. There are some things, I was doing this talk, where was it? I can't even remember. And somebody asked me about wire recordings. This was not a format that was super popular, but it existed. You could record audio literally on metal wire. I was like, yeah, I would love a wire player. I don't have one. They're like incredibly rare. For that, you're going to have to go to one of the big digitization vendors on the level of George Blood, because these are just not common anywhere anymore. If we're talking about our digital stuff, particularly stuff that's in the cloud, right? I've got a lot of stuff in the cloud. You probably have a lot of stuff in the cloud. Everybody has a lot of stuff in the cloud. But that means that you are exposed to cloud business risks. Who's heard of Mega Upload or Kim.com? Yeah, I thought you might have. Mega Upload was a cloud storage provider run by a real character, and not in the good way, called Tim.com. He literally changed his name by default to Kim.com. And the interesting for certain values of interesting about Mega Upload, and that eventually got it brought down, was massive, massive copyright infringement. With the knowing connivance of Tim.com and basically everybody who was running Mega Upload, it was a place where everybody was exchanging bootleg movies and what have you. So eventually, the infringement lawsuits caught up with Kim.com, and a judge ordered the data center, right, where all the servers with all the data were, ordered it shut down. Basically, flip the switch, turn everything off. Turns out it wasn't just bootleggers who were putting stuff on Mega Upload. There was one photographer, I recall, who had all his entire portfolio on Mega Upload with no backups. Yeah, did not go well. I mean, he went to the judge and he said, just let me get my stuff back. Cross my heart, it's not infringing, you can check. They were like, nope, sorry. It was too much effort for just little old you. So that was that. There's also security risks. I mean, for anything digital, always security risks. But a famous example was a guy named Matt Honan, who's a technology reporter. Apple was his beat. And so he had all his family photographs and stuff, including irreplaceable pictures of his first baby, in iCloud, which is the Apple cloud storage service. A garbage human was able to figure out actually some fairly basic information about Honan, who was, of course, a public figure, right? And so they called Apple support and managed to con them into giving him control over Matt Honan's account, at which point he just wiped everything that Honan had in iCloud. And no backups. Bye-bye, pictures of your first baby. So we end up having to think about that stuff where you don't have to think about it as much for the box that's in the bottom of your closet. Even if you do, heaven forbid, get robbed, they're probably not going for the box of photos in the bottom of your closet. That'll probably still be there. Not the case, necessarily, with digital stuff. So wow, that's a downer. Sorry about that. But does it mean that all hope is lost? Absolutely not. Particularly for magnetic media, we have this precious window of time. Like, we're sitting right in the middle of this precious window of time. Please, let's use it. So this is a very old, actually, picture. of my lashed together rig in the back corner of the information school library. It's called RAD, for Recover Analog and Digital Data, and it's got lots of things. That's a Betacam deck. That's Betamax. This is High 8. That looks like a VHS to DVD. That's my time-based corrector. That's my tape rewinder, just for convenience, a switch. Tape player. An incredibly weird thing called an ADAT deck. Somebody thought it was a good idea. This is actually one of the first forms of digital audio as opposed to analog audio. Somebody thought it was a good idea to record 8 tracks of audio onto a super VHS tape. I haven't had one of these things come through the office yet. If any of you actually have one, I would love to see it. But just an example of the weird and wild stuff that got invented. So I haven't had any use for that deck yet, but when I saw it, I was just like, oh, I have to have this. And then, what's that top? I think the top one is a digital audio tape deck. You can see my record players. In the middle there, we've got some mini DV camcorders, various other things. Slides, I can do slides. There's my open reel tape deck. It's a beautiful thing. It's a Revox. I love it to bits. And under that is my 8-track tape player. More digital stuff between the 2 monitors. You know, you end up accumulating a lot of stuff if you're interested in this business, in this work. But the thing about this is that when I was first doing demos, I would literally have to disassemble large parts of it and cart it to wherever the demo was taking place. And wow, that is not sustainable. That's just not a good way to do everything, especially considering, and you see a little bit of it here, just the cable madness that gets involved when you get a whole bunch of cable-reliant things together in a server rack. So it's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. Not just for demos, but also for situations where people are not necessarily ready to hand their most precious family possessions over to some stranger who wears floppy disk earrings, right, and is generally weird. They're not willing to do that. So I was like, okay, is there some way that I can take the equipment to them? So I asked the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Oh, wow. Coming up on 10 years ago. And I said, here's the problem. Give me some money and help me solve it. And they gave me some money. Thank you, IMLS. Love you. To build a couple of kits, which are actually in the back of the room for those of you who are here. And they're 2 kits. One of them is Pravda, which there are not many English words with AV. That's not a common combination of letters. So that one stands for Portably Recover Audio and Video. DA, whatever I decided that stood for. The other one is PROUD, which is Portable Recovery of Unique Data. I'm proud of that one. I did good. But you do not necessarily have to come to me to get this work done. And in fact, I kind of had to shut down the service after the acute phase of the pandemic because 1, I ran out of time, 2, I ran out of money to repair some of my equipment. So while I build up my nest egg again so I can get some of my equipment repaired, the service is no longer in operation. But there are other services that are. And you can do this. There's a lot of this that if you're a little tiny bit adventurous, you can totally do from home. And if you run into trouble, you can ask me. I have an email address. You're all welcome to use it. So let's talk about how that works. First step, and this is as true for an individual or a family as it is for like the Library of Congress. You have to know what you have and how much of it you have. So step 1 is figure that out. I find find this helpful. You may or may not obligatory, but I think it's helpful. The Preservation Self-Assessment Program, psap.library.illinois.edu, free online tool that helps you inventory. And I believe, if I remember right, will give you some guidance on maybe what to prioritize because it may not last that much longer. Produces reports on the factors that impact the health of cultural heritage materials, which is a fancy way of saying it'll tell you what's at risk. And it'll make suggestions for where to start. By the way, Sarah has a print copy of these slides, so if you do not catch all of the URLs, you can ask Sarah for that copy later. So once you have your inventory, you start to make the hard decisions about what you maybe don't want to keep anymore. Because one of the hard truths about this work, especially as we're staring that alarm clock in the face, is that we can't save everything that we wish we could. I think a place to start for a lot of people is weed out your duplicates. If you have duplicate photos, duplicate slides, keep one to digitize, get rid of the other one. Ones, if you're my parents, the slides in my parents' home. Wow, that's gonna be a whole thing. But yeah, duplicates are a good place to start. Another thing to look for is materials that have just lost all of their significance because nobody knows what they are anymore. If you digitize a photo, you send it around to all of your family and nobody has any idea who these people are, what this event was, I would argue that it's maybe not worth keeping. Keep the stuff that does have known significance. And as I will say later, capture that significance before it's too late. I will talk about that. The reason I say this, well, a few different reasons. But the main reason that I say this is that sometimes people will do the inventory and then they look at all the stuff they have and they're overwhelmed. And so they don't do anything. They put it back in its box and they shove the box back in the closet. Make it easier on yourself. I give you permission as a librarian to get rid of the stuff that just doesn't have meaning anymore. It's fine. There are no archivist police. We're not going to come after you. That's not a thing. Prioritize the stuff that still has meaning. Once you know what you have and what kinds of stuff you have, you can decide how you're going to deal with it. There is some stuff that you can probably put back in its box, put the box in the closet, and you're fine. Photographic slides, I'm not worried about them. Really not. Those are gonna last. If you have polyester film, Super 8, that kind of thing, it's fine. It's fine. If you have any film, and I mean actual like film, where you pick up the film can and it smells like vinegar, you have a problem and you need to deal with it right now. The film that you have is acetate film. Vinegar is acetic acid. So what you have is a film that is suffering from what is called vinegar syndrome, which means it is actively deteriorating. Like you are losing whatever is on that film. There's no way to reverse it. There's no way to fix it. And we don't have any way to stop the deterioration, is the thing with vinegar syndrome. So the best you're ever going to be able to do is digitize it right now. Yeah, that's my vinegar syndrome spiel. If you have nitrate film, I hope you don't, and you probably don't. That's going to be way back 1920s, 1930s. Most folks are not going to have nitrate film. If you ever run into nitrate film, however, call the hazmat people and exit the building. Nitrate film spontaneously explodes. People have died. I am not kidding. Because of nitrate film. Don't mess around with it. Call hazmat. All right. But for the stuff that's not going to explode, does not have vinegar syndrome, you get to decide how you want to deal with it. A lot of this stuff you can outsource. Not that expensively, particularly for really common late 20th century formats these days. There have been services springing up to help you deal. Want to mention a couple of local services that I think are useful to know about. Here at the UW, the Communication Arts Department runs a media preservation lab. Kind of like mine, only much more elaborate, and he is not self-taught and knows what he's doing a lot better than I do. And anybody, if you're willing to pay them to digitize your stuff, he will digitize your stuff, and he's going to do a good job. So comarts.wisc.edu and look for their media preservation lab. There's also an outfit in town called Holder Printworks, and it's, I believe, just holderprintworks.com. Does a fair few video and audio formats from the mid to late 20th century, 21st century. Also does photo restoration. I believe he will also do slides. Run by a lovely gentleman called Joel Holder, and he will treat you right. I really trust Joel. And I'm not just saying this because a number of our students have done practicums, internships with Joel. I know Joel, and he's a terrific human being. If you want to do it yourself, I wrote up everything I learned from building those kits. And it is all at this URL right here. There's a link to a PDF with everything I know about the formats that I am familiar with. So even if you're not sure whether you want to outsource or do it yourself, you can use this. You can figure out what it would take, basically, to do it yourself. And make an educated decision about how you're going to go about it. My email address, by the way, salo@wisc.edu. If you have questions, I am happy to field them. One thing I will caution you about, particularly if you outsource, you don't want a digital equivalent of this falling apart book here. One of the things I teach my students when I teach digitization, which I don't get to do as often as I wish I did, but oh well, is that digitizing to archival standards of quality is different from asking somebody to just make you a DVD. If you don't digitize to archival or at least reasonable standards of quality, you're kind of limiting your reuse possibilities. Have you ever noticed how pictures, for example, from the early web, if you look at a very old website, those pictures tend to look really, really pixelated and ugly and gross? That's because they were digitized at resolutions that made sense then, but our screens are much better now. So that's part of the reason we have things like archival standards of quality. Above all, do not let anyone digitize a video that is precious to you to DVD. DVD is bad. The DVD was a compromise. It was a commercial compromise for movies. A DVD is like under 5 gigs. I think it's like 4.7 gigs of digital storage. And that's not enough for quality video. It's just not enough. If you watch a DVD actually on a big enough screen, you will start to see the artifacts, the blockiness, the places where they've condensed the video data to make it fit on a DVD. So DVDs are bad. The least you should accept is an MP4. And that's kind of the lowest rung of what we would consider archival quality. But for a lot of VHS tapes particularly, VHS is not a terribly great format. It never was. So honestly, an MP4 probably fine. You're just not going to notice much of an uptick of quality if you really go hardcore or high quality on it. So yeah, that's fine. But please, not a DVD.
Dorothea, I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a family member that's already, this is from my uncle, he's been watching on my
All right.
He's already taken family VHS tapes and put them on DVDs.
Okay.
Is there something that he needs to do to re-back those up or put them onto?
I would actually redigitize them if possible.
Okay, and onto MP4s?
MP4s are better. The question was, if you've already digitized family video to DVD, what should you do? I would say try to get them redigitized, at least to MP4. The other reason that I'm down on DVDs, aside from the quality issue, which is enough, is that, every laptop, every computer used to come with a DVD drive. How many people in this room, do your computers have DVD drives anymore? Yeah, yours does. Of course, yours does. And, I have a computer for my kit with a DVD drive. But for most of us, that's not something that's useful anymore, which is a huge sign that the format is dying. The format is dying. So MP4, digital file, save it. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. And once you have your game plan, do the thing. And here's the stinger. You've digitized all your stuff. Yay, go you. Now you have to worry about not having what happened to Matt Honan or what happened to that poor guy at Mega Upload, or the other photographer at Flickr who was wrongly accused of breaking Flickr's terms of service. So they wiped his account and his entire portfolio and no backups. You don't want that to happen. So I have to talk a little bit about digital preservation. Things that can happen to DVDs and CDs and discs and literally anything digital, really, is that they can break somehow. Or they can get ransomware. Individuals are not at a high risk, I would say, of ransomware, but never say never. Ransomware people are just garbage humans. So your step 5 is looking after what you have. 3, 2, 1, it is what I teach my students, and it's what I am going to teach you. For any data that you want to be pretty sure of keeping, you want 3 copies. You want at least 2 different setups. So a laptop could be one, an external hard drive could be one, the cloud could be one. What you don't want is, all of your 3 copies are on 3 different examples of the same model of hard drive. Sometimes hard drive manufacturers have bum production runs. It usually happens to a specific model. So if all of your copies are on that model of hard drive, you're screwed. So don't let that happen. 3 copies on at least 2 different kinds of media. And at least one of them should be real-world geographically distant from where you are. Most cloud services easily count for this. This is the don't get caught in a tornado or a flood, or, heaven forbid, your house burning down. You don't want all of your copies to disappear because something like that happens to you. The goal of 3, 2, 1 is not to never lose a copy ever of anything. Of course you're going to lose copies, right? We live in a world with entropy. The goal is for losing a copy to be a problem, but not a crisis. If you have those other 2 copies, you can remake the 3rd, and it's fine. If you have a photograph, and all you know about it is that it's a photograph, it's a picture of something, you don't really know anything about it. So you need to do your best to describe what each of the things that you have is. The fancy information science word for this is metadata, but you do not have to be fancy about it. You can do this in a Word document. You can do it in a spreadsheet. You can do it in a Google Doc. I don't care how you do it. Just describe as much as you can about the stuff in your collection. And sometimes you can do this collectively. For example, a lot of wedding photos, right? And you may not know everybody all who's in them, but they're wedding photos, they're important, you want to keep them. Then you can say, this picture through that picture, they're all from this wedding, which took place on such and such a date. The bridesmaids were these people, the groomsmen were these people, et cetera, et cetera. You can just describe all of the wedding photos collectively, and that's fine. but describe as much as you can. And for folks who are getting up there in age, as I am starting to do, and for young folks whose grandparents, aunts, uncles, whoever, the elders in your family are the keepers of family history, you want to talk to them about the stuff that you have, because there is a lot of information in their heads that, and I hate to be morbid about this, but that information will pass away when they do. So write it down. Talk to them, show them the stuff. Like 99 out of 100 of them will be thrilled that you're interested. All right, but get that information before it's too late. The last thing you want to do, because wow, does stuff happen. Last fall, I completely out of the blue got very seriously and potentially fatally sick. No, it was not COVID. Who knew that there were other diseases in the world, but there are. And it was caught early, and I'm very, very lucky, because a lot of people die of the stuff that I have, and I'm not that old, in my 50s. But yeah, I could have been gone. And one of the things that I have not done that I need to do is actually do what I'm calling signposting the stuff that I have that's important to other people in my family. When you make a will, when you check your will to be sure it's still what you want, write down where your digital stuff is. Write down any passwords that people are going to need to have to access it. It's really common for stuff in the cloud, and if you're a little paranoid as I am, and you encrypt your hard drives, you want to have those passwords. But make sure people can get to stuff, because life is uncertain. And this is a really, really sad way to lose family and community history. All right. That is how you save your stuff. That is how you save your family's stuff. Collectively, this is how we save our community history, which I really, really think is important. And I hope you will all go out there and save as much stuff as you can, because it is getting to be a little bit late for a lot of it. Thank you very much, folks who are here in the room. Thank you very much, folks who are online. I really do appreciate your time. My email address is up on the screen here, salo@wisc.edu. And I can't promise that I will get to your question within like a business day or anything. I'm kind of a busy person. But if it gets lost in my email, you have my permission to email me again. And usually by the second time, I'm like, oh, I'm embarrassed. Let me actually answer this. But you will get an answer from me. Cross my heart. All right, folks in the room, folks online, any questions? Any particular formats that you're curious about, that you know you have? Yeah?
So, during COVID, I made 4 albums, like scrapbook type albums.
Sure.
And with photographs, and I put as much information as I can.
Yay!
Their dates and names and stuff.
Perfect.
So, would I take that someplace to have that?
To have it digitized, you could.
Or just...
There are also freelance archivists who will do it. So you might want to look for people of that stripe. There are a few in town. Email me. I know a couple, 3 people you can ask. The other thing I would be concerned about in your case is the question of the album itself and what kind of material it's made of. Because there are types of paper, of like backing and stuff that will, all acid-free, okay, good. That was literally what I was getting at. But you can, unfortunately, some of these albums, the really, really cheap ones, will damage your stuff over time, and don't want that to happen. You don't have to be an archivist to use archival product catalogs. A really common one is Gaylord, gaylord.com. And they have archival acid-free boxes if you still have stuff in a shoebox in your closet. They'll be much better than a shoebox. And they have the kinds of things that you would want in order to take really good care of documentary materials, paper and paper-like materials. So definitely check out Gaylord.
Okay. So I would want to go to one of these freelance archivists or something.
Maybe.
Rather than just take a picture with my...
Taking a picture with your cell phone. Yeah, that's getting to the point where it's actually a viable and reasonable way to do things. There are, you're not going to want to build this, trust me. But there are do-it-yourself film digitization, actually, and book and manuscript, et cetera, digitization kits, where you actually do mount your phone above the thing and use it to take pictures. If you're really highfalutin, you would use a DSLR, a decent quality digital camera. For most people, though, if you've got a relatively recent phone, I would be okay with that.
Okay.
I would be okay with that. Good lighting.
Yeah.
Try to put it in a place for good lighting. Be careful of the angle, because you can really distort stuff if it's flat and or it's not flat and you're taking it from a flat angle. So be aware of your lighting, be aware of the angles. But yeah, it's reasonable. Anything else?
Can you tell us the name of that website for the media preservation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me see if I can find it. And I put this slide in today and I didn't put the URL on it. But it's off the ComArts website, Communication Arts, and that is just comarts.wisc.edu. You should be able to find it from there. The other thing you can do is a site : comarts.wisc.edu and media preservation, and that should get you right to it. I will fix that when I get back to the office.
So, I have another question.
Yeah.
So, when I take pictures of this album,
Yeah.
so would I save it as an album in a file in iCloud or wherever?
You could.
Or,
What I would be inclined to do is, keep the images separate, because when you cram them all together into some other file format, not uncommonly PDF is what people will do, but they're also proprietary. Depending on what image software you use, there's probably some proprietary thing that they will do. And the thing about proprietary things is that when that software becomes obsolete, so does your file. So you want to avoid that. What I would do is keep the image files separate and put them in a single folder in your file system, and put the description of the album in a file in that same folder. Think about a Google Docs folder. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I think on the whole that will be safest and will cause you the least problems 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Can you go through that again?
Yeah, I can. So, software that you might use to look at your images or to brush them up or whatever you're going to do will sometimes have their own kind of put all of this in an album, in a single file, in some kind of thing. And you don't want to do that, because then you're relying entirely on that software continuing to be available to be able to read that album. What it makes more sense to do is keep the various image files separate, and just keep them together.
And save it as an album, or
I wouldn't. Save the individual images separately.
in a separate file.
Yep.
Like under their name and my family history.
Sure, that'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be all right.
It's a lot of work.
It is kind of. There's sometimes some ways to automate it, but
Thank you.
If you want to email me with the exact setup you're looking at, like what software you're planning to use and things like that, what kind of phone you have, I can give you better advice. Which I am happy to do. Try that, and that's another thing about file formats, actually. Try for file formats that are in extremely common use and that can be viewed in a lot of different kinds of software. So you take your ordinary JPEG, for example. You can look at that in image software. You can look at it in a web browser, right? You can look at it on your phone. You can look at it anywhere. So not a bad choice. I don't love JPEG, actually, because it's lossy. But for a lot of photos, it may be the best you can do. Prefer pings, PNG, if you can. Some phones will let you, some won't.
I think you're kind of beyond me. But
No.
I would just take a
I'm glad
picture
you're
with
here.
my camera, with my phone.
Yeah.
And then it would just upload it or transfer to my computer.
Yes, good.
And then it is a JPEG. I think.
It probably will be a JPEG.
And then put it in a file.
Yep.
Saved to iCloud.
Yeah. So then that's 2 of your 3.
Yeah.
All right. You have it on your computer and you have it in iCloud. I recommend one, and you have it on, you have it on your phone, but eh.
No, I have it in my album. My actual physical.
Oh, you have, right, of course, you have your actual physical album. Yeah, that counts. That totally counts. That's your 3rd copy. I'll go with that. Because I mean, worst case scenario, you lose both of your digital copies, you can always redigitize the album. Not that you want to, because as you say, it's a lot of work, but what I do for what it's worth is that I have my laptop and I have an external hard drive. This is my work laptop, so I have an external hard drive in my office. I have another external hard drive for my home laptop. And I also have an account with the cloud storage provider Backblaze. I like them for a number of reasons, most of which are not really germane to this presentation. But I mean, Google, iCloud, Google Drive, Microsoft, whatever. OneDrive, I think they call it. Any of those is fine for most people. I'm not a Microsoft person. I am totally a Mac head. I frequently have to teach from Windows, though, so I'm not allowed to be completely clueless. Well, and actually, a lot of the digitization and data rescue work I do, I have to do it from Windows because Apple is absolutely ruthless about cutting off backward compatibility. So there's a lot of things I can do on Windows that I cannot do on a modern Mac. Right, are we good?
I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so glad to be here.
Really appreciate it. Learned a lot tonight.
Good. What I'm here for. Yes, gosh. Well, and I owe y'all an apology come to that. This was originally scheduled for October. And I was like a week and a half out of the hospital at that point. And this was actually the last thing that I canceled because I so wanted to get here. But I was not in good shape a week and a half out. Feeling much better now.
And if for some reason any of you forget what our email address, just
Yeah, Sarah can get in touch with me. Absolutely.
So, all right. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.